Almost there. Live. Welcome everyone to another edition, episode number 2 of season 2. Today I am talking to the one, the only prophet of Zod. Lots of you probably know who he is because he's got well over 6,000 subscribers now. So, Mr. Prophet, or do I call you Zod, or
whatever you want to do? Zod works. That's I think
Zod works.
Default to.
Okay. Basically, what I do here is I have people talk about stories, and I like to know kind of that time when you first sort of started noticing that these things that you had belief in kind of started fading away because there were too many questions or stuff like that. You know what I mean? So why don't you take us back to basically when this started happening for you and your pathway up to the amazing atheist advocate that you are now?
Yeah, it's really hard to tell in my case. Like, I didn't have an abrupt deconversion or abrupt series of doubts or anything like that.
Right.
I just went along a pretty typical path, I think, of just starting to think things didn't make sense or have doubts. And sorry, I'm getting some kind of echo. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can fix it on here.
I'll just turn my phone on so I can pay attention to comments.
Okay. Yeah, it was really gradual with me to the point that I couldn't really tell when I started doubting. There were just a lot of typical questions that I would have that all Christians have, I think, when they're reading the Bible or hearing stories from Christian tradition. And eventually it got to some point where it got into my mind enough where I started seriously considering it, but trying to stuff it down. And eventually I gave up on that and just more or less stopped believing. So
awesome. Now I remember you mentioning before in, I think, one or two of your videos where you're talking about how your family, they're still kind of believers.
Yeah. Most of my family is. I have one brother who also is not. He's an atheist and actually was a atheist YouTuber for a while. But the rest of my family is Christian to one extent or another.
Right.
So,
and how did they deal with it when you, like, did you confess to everyone that the beliefs, or like, was there problems, or do some of them not talk to you anymore, that kind of thing?
Some don't talk to me, but I don't think it has to do with this in particular. But it's hard to tell.
Maybe it's your choice in peanut butter.
Yeah. Most of them were pretty good about it, to be honest. I didn't have the really horrible stereotypical experience that a lot of people do.
Right.
It came out fairly slowly, and I tried to tell most of my really close family members before I publicly said anything to people. And they were pretty good about it. They said they kind of tell, and it wasn't great news to them, but they weren't upset with me or anything like that. I did have one family member who said things about me choosing to reject my beliefs or something along those lines. I was a little bit more angry, but it hasn't really been in my face much. I think my family's generally non-confrontational, so that stuff doesn't get really big and explosive.
Good.
So,
yeah, that's confrontational. It's good that they're non-confrontational.
Yeah, in this case, it was.
It's always good when people are like that. Yeah, wow, I'm getting choppy. Have you had any issues, like, with friends? Have you lost any friends over this?
I don't think I really have. There are people, I've had friends on Facebook who I have lost. Either I think they've just kind of disappeared and quit talking to me.
Wow.
But nobody I was close to, really. So
just people that.
Yeah, the impact hasn't been. The impact hasn't been that great for me. Yeah, it's been most interesting, I think, with my kids, but that's gone fine, more or less. But yeah.
Oh, wow.
Fortunately, but unfortunately for the sake of the story, I don't have any great dramatic stories about anything really weird or explosive happening. So I guess it's kind of like the boring Christian testimony. Nothing really crazy went down. I had the typical thing. I mean, I had made a video about it. I had the typical thing where a lot of people kept asking me dumb questions like about evolution and, well, where do you get your morality and all those things that we've all answered 1,000 times. They all piped in with those and thought it was the first time I'd ever heard such a question. But yeah,
I find that that's usually the case when they pop those questions on you. Is the standard questions like you just mentioned, plus other ones, and when you tell them, that's not the first time I've heard this, they kind of like, oh really? You mean I'm not that smart? Kind of, they have almost like that attitude. I didn't think this up myself. Oh, okay. And yeah, so and like you said, we're used to these kinds of questions and are well prepared to answer them to whatever degree that we do.
It's been a long time since I've heard a Christian ask me a question or start to phrase an argument that I couldn't finish for them halfway through. It is really that rote and that mundane. So
I got to ask you, I saw that there's this, I think he's an Indian fella that uses the same sort of snowy mask thing that you do.
Oh yeah.
Which is kind of funny.
Unwanted Commentary, I think is his name.
Is that? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Now you've had it before him, correct?
Yeah, he's pretty new. He was Cosmological brought him to my attention on Twitter. He pointed him out to me, and I looked at the guy. He's fairly new. I think just within the last few months. I saw him, and he had about 3,000 subscribers. And over the course of a couple of days, he had like 15,000 or something like that.
Holy crap! Really?
Yeah. Yeah, he did something about. There's some big YouTube controversy about some of these PewDiePie and some of these big people. I don't even really know what this is all about, but he did something about that, and all of a sudden he went from a couple thousand views per video to that thing exploded, and all of a sudden people are subscribing to him left and right. But
they agreed with whatever he said about it all.
I don't know, or it made good clickbait. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's always true too. I find that works quite a bit sometimes.
But yeah, I made a comment on his made a comment on his trailer video saying, "Oh, you have my face," and he laughed and said, "Oh, I didn't realize I wasn't the only one who thought of this." And he said we should do some kind of collaboration sometime. But
yeah, that might actually, just for shits and giggles, that might actually be kind of fun.
Yeah, it could be funny.
I think you're the only two that.
Oh, sorry. Someone in the chat asked who I'm talking about. It's a YouTuber named Unwanted Commentary who has the same face as I do, just by chance.
Yeah. He thought he had an original idea, but it turns out he didn't, which is not surprising, right? I mean, if you think about it, even if we say, oh, it's a 1 in a million chance, there's 7 billion people on the planet, people.
Right.
So that's like 7,000 people that could come up with the same idea.
Yeah.
If you go, right. So, so what gave you the idea to use that as your quote unquote disguise or avatar or whatever? What gave you that idea?
I was thinking of a way to obscure my face, and my brother had been showing me little color keying tricks. And so I realized if I put on a mask and did that, that'd be a fun way to not show my face beyond just having a mask. At that time, there weren't nearly as many people out there using avatars for their YouTube channels as there are now. And what I had originally watched was like Logic, and there was a guy named Grappling Ignorance, people who would show themselves either with a mask or somehow obscured by shadows or whatever. And so I was going to just do something along those lines, because that just seemed like what people did if they didn't want to show their face. And so the static thing just popped into my head sometime, and I decided to try it, and there we go. Yeah,
and you know what I think is kind of funny about that is that staticky, snowy thing is indicative of the Big Bang, I've been told, because you can actually there's remnants of it within that static, the what do you call it, the background radiation noise that people can see when they look at the snow. Some background radiation noise in there, which is evidentiary of the Big Bang, which wasn't really a bang, but that's all right. That's just the name they gave it.
So there wasn't like fuel that exploded?
Yeah, no, it wasn't like a bucket of gasoline somewhere that just blew everything into existence. Well, we all know what it was. Something getting infinitesimally small and couldn't get any smaller and expanded. And here we are. And who knows how many other ones that happened. Because a lot of people do go by that multi-universe or multiverse theory.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's still a hypothesis. It's not even made it to theory yet. Which is something else. I always find that people always talk, when you were talking about evolution, you hear a lot of theists or believers in general saying, oh, it's just a theory. And what they don't realize is that in the realm of science, theory is like the highest echelon anything can be.
Yeah.
So when you bring that up to them, it kind of stymies their conversation a little bit because they don't know where to go from that.
Well, and it gets frustrating for me because that's one of those things one of those many things that they think is a gotcha. Like not to be too stereotypical, but I think most Christians mull around within Christian circles and aren't exposed to people with a lot of different opinions. And so they repeat to themselves characterizations of atheists and things about atheism that are stupid. And they repeat these arguments to each other, thinking that none of us would have ever heard it. So they come out and tell us, and we've heard it for the 1,000 times. They're not prepared for that. They think we're going to be like, what basis for your morality? What? Evolution is just a theory. So one of those, which was pretty recent, I had people telling me that evolution's only a theory, or they put theory in all caps, as if a gotcha thing for like, it's not a fact, it's just a theory. Or, well, how do you have faith that molecules decided to become life? All these things. And it gets to the point where I get tired of trying to explain it to people, because you can't really even start having a conversation without explaining these really baseline things over and over for everybody who approaches you every single time. Well, no, nobody thinks the molecules decided. Evolution is not a purposeful process. The mundane things you have to educate them on before you can even start debating just get really frustrating. And so I'm getting to the stage where I'm having trouble engaging people one-on-one until I can get a little bit more patience or find a better approach for that.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I've always been of the camp where if it's the whole creation versus evolution, and people, do you want to debate about it? I always like, there's no debate, dude. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is ridiculous to even consider this to be something that's legitimate when we know that evolution, based on the evidence, is real. It's a thing. Yeah. And sure, you could argue the God had a hand in starting that, which I'm one of those guys who considers all deities mythology anyway. So sure, but you're going to have to demonstrate that actually happened, right?
Right.
And often they're like, well, you weren't there to see it going. And I'm like, well, you weren't there to see God's hand in the, like, it's going to be a big argument in a circle here.
Yeah, the debate is like, I don't know if you've ever heard of that comedian, Dara O'Brien, the Irish comedian, where he says it's like giving equal time to, on one hand, somebody who thinks there's outer space and atmosphere, and the other guy thinks it's a carpet that's, the sky's a big carpet that they Velcro the moon and everything to. I mean, that's basically the level of actual controversy that's behind this.
I've never heard that, to be honest. Never heard the sewed to a carpet thing. The firmament I've heard, but I've never heard the carpet one before.
Well, he was making fun. It was an exaggeration, but that's essentially the level of conversation that's happening. It's one thing is just purely made up and mythical, and the other thing is actual science.
Right.
And it's not even a debate. It's just kind of instructing people.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how I look at it too. When they ask me if I want to discuss it, I'm like, sure, but what's the point? I mean, I'm going to provide actual evidence for you to examine. You're going to either not really examine it, or you're just going to, call it lies. Kind of like the flat earthers when NASA's lying and it's all CGI. Yeah, like they had CGI in the 60s, you noob. What's wrong with you?
Well, they did.
Well, yeah, maybe, right. Yeah.
Part of the problem is I think so much science is just unintuitive now. It's not. There's so much complex information out there. You just can't immediately get your head around all of it. And so when an apologist or creationist gives you some little line of reasoning that seems to make sense and connect the dots, it's easy to be seduced by. I think it's a lot easier. And especially when you want to believe something anyway, I can see how people fall for it, because I was a young earth creationist when I was a Christian for a period of time.
Wow.
And when I was in high school, they teach you all these things. They drill this stuff into your head. And that's where you think, I remember thinking all this stuff was brand new. I used to think when I was in 10th grade that I and some of my friends could go beat any evolutionist in the world in a debate. We would have been in for a shocker if we actually tried. But that's the mindset people have. And so when that's been drilled in your head all your life, that's what you're going to think when you go approach atheists. And unfortunately, I think when they're confronted with the fact that it's not that clean and easy, it becomes very frustrating for them. And
yeah,
that's where it's not
absolutely.
always super pretty.
I mean, on Twitter, if I get somehow I get roped into these, like someone will bring up a tweet, oh, look at this, and then I go and I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Like a creationist or something. And then they want to go on about evolution. That's when I start tagging people like Jackson Wheat. Like this guy knows a hell of a lot more than I do, and he hasn't given me shit for doing it yet. So that's
good.
Yeah, him and what's his name? And I can't remember his name. Starts with an R. Anyways, I'll think of it eventually. But so you were going to say something.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of things like that. Another one that is very popular now is to treat everything like a philosophical position or something that requires philosophical support. Like I'm being currently questioned by somebody about on what grounds I decided. If you don't mind, I'll look up the wording here real quick. I'll just read it right off of Twitter.
Yeah, not at all. I do that too sometimes because I can't keep everything in my brain all at once all the time.
Be patient with an old person trying to juggle multiple windows here.
I'm old too.
Yeah, so let's see. My question for you, if you don't mind, how do you personally determine if something written is true or not, especially from the ancient world? How do you see it? And then he asked, I know you're a former believer, correct? I'm curious about what made you change your mind about textual interpretation / hermeneutics. Do you think skepticism offers the correct default interpretation and historical understanding of the Bible as former theist? And then he says, same question for you regarding the supernatural. Do you accept your position philosophically, or do you think there is sufficient empirical evidence to support it? And it goes on, but I won't keep reading it.
Mrs. Snarky said someone's been talking to Steve.
Well, I think this has become a popular...
Steve goes on about that.
I think it's become a popular Christian thing, though. It's not just Steve's thing about atheism needing... atheism needing support as a position. I think it's become very fashionable to adopt kind of high philosophical sounding language to make it sound like you have one philosophical approach to Bible or the supernatural, and we have ours. When really in response to his questions, he asked something about, do I take the Bible, do I take skepticism as the default position or something like that? I just said yes, but that's basically a really unwieldy way of saying I don't take ancient books of scripture at face value. And so they're really describing really basic common sense things that we would all do in any other situation and applying it to the Bible just to equate common sense with blind faith. And
right, of course.
So they've just learned this really wordy song and dance, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if someone comes to you and says, listen, I was walking down the street and some guys jumped out of a van and abducted me into the van and tied me to a chair in a warehouse, and they had aliens there and the aliens wanted to probe me, I'm pretty sure you'd be skeptical.
Exactly. Right?
So, and some of the stories in any of the old scriptures really are just that extraordinary. And like Carl Sagan says, extraordinary claims and extraordinary evidence, right? So.
And they could argue about that. I mean, I know some people argue about that phrasing or whatever, but it's the same approach we use in any other situation in life. There's a basic level of skepticism about a report of something supernatural or something weird. And Christians think it just doesn't apply to their own scripture.
Right.
It's just backing to something you already believe. It's pretty simple stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Agree. Well, apparently I have quite the imagination. Well, that's this kind of stuff that floats around in my head there, Randolph. So Randolph is actually the fellow that I am going to be teaming up with. We're going to be starting up our own call-in show, very much like Truth Wanted and the Atheist Experience right up here in Canada. We're going to call it True North.
Oh, so, cool.
That's coming up. Probably, I'm hoping maybe by spring or in early summer, we'll have that getting going. Got a couple meetings to go with some people on, equipment and stuff that we're going to need. So, yeah. Anyways, that's besides all this. I just thought I'd throw that out there because there's people actually watching that might want to watch. When exactly did you decide that you were going to become an activist?
It happened pretty quickly after I became an atheist.
Did you go through the angry phase? I hear a lot of people that when they leave, they have that feeling like they've been lied to, and they kind of go on a bit of an angry binge for a bit before they settle into their current belief system or whatever.
No, I really didn't, for a few reasons. I never went through the angry phase or the destructive phase or any of those kinds of things. Really, just to really briefly sum up my experience better than I have so far, I started out in a Christian school where I, totally bought into creationism, all that kind of stuff. I went to college, and when you go there and learn that non-Christian professors, secular professors, even evolutionists or whatever, quote unquote, are a lot smarter and more articulate and have better reasons for what they say than you think, I find that very upsetting and uncomfortable. And there was always kind of this gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach when I'd hear some of these things from an anthropology or biology professor, sometimes even my English professors. And so that was some of my first experiences of doubt, but I just kind of tried to bury it at that point. And then when I went to my new college out of state, I was attending Campus Crusade and was heavily involved in that. I was actually kind of involved in apologetics to some extent. And
you were?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you
what's that?
Were you a lot like a William Lane Craig kind of level, or?
No. I was involved in that. I had an interest in it. I seen William Lane Craig. He came to our school. I'd been in a meeting with Josh McDowell because he's in Campus Crusade. And I'd gotten a slight reputation for like writing articles and stuff, but nothing near like a professional apologist. I wasn't that sleazy or charismatic or anything.
I still kind of want to see him live, to be honest.
Who?
William Lane Craig.
Oh yeah. It's nothing spectacular beyond what you see on a video.
Right. Yeah, I know, but that way I could actually yell stuff out.
But then, yeah, so essentially the point of that was my mindset was very much trying to defend Christianity. But I think where it first started was a slow retreat from I gave up a young earth creationism. I realized that was silly, and it had some kind of old earth creationists. The flood was a local not a local legend, but the flood was a local flood, those kinds of things.
Right. Sure.
And just slowly let little things go and just started backing up to the most far-fetched, or the most kind of your last dying grasp of apologists, which is I can't prove it, but you can't prove it's wrong, that kind of thing. And just taking that kind of mellow stance. And then eventually it got to the point where I found I was more sympathetic toward atheist arguments, even though I wouldn't adopt them. I'd known my brother was an atheist for a long time when I was still more or less a Christian, but I understood him better and got along with him better than a lot of Christians. And honestly, I thought atheists had better arguments for what they believed or better reasons for what they did. Sure. And somewhere over a span of about 10 years, I would say that off and on, I really didn't believe, or would just waver between that and varying levels of doubts. But I was in a social situation, including a marriage and having kids and stuff, that I just couldn't bring myself to actually come out and say it, either to myself or to other people around me.
Right.
Sorry. So it just remained kind of buried. And this is even through a time I was working at the Christian school, that I would try, when you're in certain situations, you can really try to push yourself to feel like you're praying and feel like you're really a Christian. But eventually I started to recognize too my own effort in doing that. And when you become self-aware about that, that's when it really gets hard to keep believing, because you notice the mechanisms you're using to fool yourself. And so
I think they need an app for that.
Yeah.
Self-determination app. You can tell just how much of a believer you are.
But yeah, by the time shortly before I'd gotten divorced, I pretty much was just not a believer and was just not telling people. I think I was pretty much adopted that in my mind. And then a couple years after that, when I didn't really have the confines of marriage or anything, I told my brother about it when I was down visiting him. That's the first time I actually identified myself as an atheist to somebody. And then slowly over time, I started telling other people, and finally my kids was the biggest one. What's that? Yes,
my atheist brother. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He was probably like, "Yay!"
So that's a long way of getting around. Well, first covering some ground, I guess, but then getting around to your question about being angry. That process took so long and was so subtle that I never really felt betrayed. I never had the rug pulled out from under me like some people who very suddenly give up belief. And so I think I resolved a lot of those issues when I still called myself a Christian.
Okay.
In giving up a lot of other rationalizations, or a lot of what I would call the stances of more superstitious Christians took, I think I formed a better understanding of morality that was more secular, even though I called myself a Christian. So I got a lot of that stuff out of my system and worked it out before identifying as an atheist. So my transition was really pretty smooth.
Wow, cool.
It was more just
actually
changing jerseys than anything at that point.
Changing jerseys. I like it. That's I've heard a few stories like that. And then, of course, I've heard the opposite of the spectrum where it's pretty tragic, some of the stories that I have heard in speaking with people about this. But, as long as there are a lot of good stories, and most of them have actually been decent transitions like you've had, where they weren't as bringing up so much self-conflict and stuff like that. I think it might help other people to realize that it's not a big deal to leave a belief system for something better, for lack of a better word, so, which is kind of why I do these, so that people have an opportunity to listen to some of these stories, right? Of course, everyone's unique in these situations, but hearing stories like that, and especially one like yours where the transition wasn't so bad, could help people out.
Yeah, I think there's something to be learned from any situation. I think it's just important to hear other people talk about it and to have your situation normalized. I think that's one thing that's making things easier for a lot of people, and which is why the YouTube community is so important.
Yeah, agreed. Really agreed.
I stumbled into it pretty quickly when I was still between a doubting Christian and a closeted atheist. My brother had posted some non-stamp collector videos, and that got me watching those. I'd secretly watch them at work when nobody else could see what was on my computer. And,
he's great too. I like him.
Yeah. And that did a lot to help put into words what I was thinking. And then just, there's something I think about hearing other people's voices and seeing other people's faces when they show their faces. And just actually hearing a conversation, people going through the same thing they are. That's even different than just reading articles or something. And I think it really creates a sense of community. And I think it's done a lot of good, not necessarily to convince Christians, but anybody who's starting to doubt and ask questions and looking for a place to go. I think it gives them that community that they don't have and helps them know they're not just sitting there isolated.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's a community on YouTube of atheists that are doing great work. I mean, I've spoken to a few already, and I've always been impressed with how these videos are coming out, and just all the content involved in them. And by the way, you have no problem articulating your thoughts, in my opinion, from the videos that I've seen, just so you know.
Well, thank you.
and I'm sure many others would say the same thing. I've been a fan of yours for quite some time, man.
Well, thanks.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know who you were until I saw one of your videos show up in the suggestion feed. And I'm like, what the hell's on his face? Okay, I got to check this out. And right away I was hooked. So
nice.
You and another, one of the other ones that I took to right away was Godless Cranium, whom I've also already had a chat with. And I don't know if you guys know this. I'm not speaking specifically to you, Zod, but you probably already knew this. Shannon Q was on Seth Andrews' show.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
I actually saw that. Yeah, and it was a good episode. It was really cool. I mean, she got her start, I guess, with Paulogia, who's also now agreed to come and do his spiel on my show too. We just have to figure out a time because he's a busy guy. And then she took off on her own, and she's just boom. And now I think I've noticed quite an increase already in her sub base from just being on the Seth Andrews show. Hopefully someday.
Take off after that.
Yeah. Hopefully us lower YouTubers, I guess, for lack of a better word, maybe he'll take interest in what we have to say. I've actually was thinking the other day when I was listening to Eric and Jamie on Talk Heathen talk about all these different shows that the ACA has now down there. I'm like, geez, they don't have a deconversion story channel that they sponsor. Maybe I could do some digging, because I've actually had Eric on my show.
Mm-hmm.
So I might maybe do some prodding and see if I can get some interest there. And Jimmy is I've spoken to a lot too, and he figures it's possible. So
yeah, it's becoming a crowded field. The atheist YouTube thing
is.
Which is a good thing, I think.
Agreed.
I would rather there be a lot of small channels out there, the channels of all sizes, than just have a couple big stars, or to even become one of those because there was less competition. I think it's just, there's so many people with so many experiences, and I think it's important that they can find somebody who speaks in a way that they're going to hear, or say something that they're going to be able to relate to.
Yes, absolutely.
So a lot of us might never end up getting that big, but I think it's really important to be okay with that, and to understand that we're just all playing a role in the conversation and stuff. And it's something I've been prepared for from the start, because people always warn you, if you want to make it big, or you want to grow a lot, you're never going to grow to where you're happy, for one thing, and you're always going to be discouraged. And it's a slow slog. Being a YouTuber is a slow growth process, and it takes time. So yeah, I would encourage anybody who wants to do that kind of thing, give it a shot and get your voice out there. But don't expect to become a big star or anything. It's not really about that. It's just about being content to have your voice out there and do stuff, say things you like and you want to say. And it does make a difference.
Oh, it does, absolutely. And the more voices we have out there, even if there's if it seems to be, so many of us now, that how do you filter through? It's still important. If you have ideas and you guys want to talk about these ideas, start a channel. I can't encourage that enough, because the more of us that are out there speaking about this sort of stuff, we're going to reach a wider audience eventually. Yeah. So, and these ideas need to be shared, in my opinion, because religion's been around for a long time and it's done enough damage, in my opinion. So, anyway,
and there are a lot of people out there who are still dealing with it. And that's who I've started to target. I think you need to settle into who your argument is, or who your audience is. I think and you get a feel for what you want to say to them. I've started speaking less to Christians than to people who are on the fence or are starting to doubt and wondering where to go with it. Because those are the people I think are going to be reaching out, watching YouTube channels. Committed fundamentalist Christians aren't going to be going out and finding atheist YouTube channels on the internet.
No, they'll be watching SJ and Andrew and that other idiot stick that they do their own little pretend debates. I don't know if you've seen one of those, but holy cow. What the hell? Andrew Stradler or whatever the hell his name is. And then, Master Apologist, Mr. Humble, which I always thought was hysterical. They're probably going to be watching those guys and seeing is that how atheists debate? Yeah, or
just going to church. Any Christian who's on YouTube for the purpose of religion is going to be so dug in anyway. You might say something that plants a seed of doubt or something, but I think it's really the seekers, just the people who are out there looking to learn something, or having doubts, or an atheist and struggling for what to do. I think giving them tools for how to cope with their situation and how to sort out their thoughts. Yeah, that's more what I've started to do. And I know that I think we all have a limited reach. If you're doing something really good, a lot of times you will. Like I don't do a drawn out conversational, informal type of video. I do more very tight scripted videos, whether it's a cartoon or just a presentation or response video. I try to make everything I say very purposeful and give it a certain flow, and try to pack as much in and make every second count. And that works for some people, but other people do want something a little more charismatic and engaging, or just conversational. And so I know that I have a certain more, I don't know how to describe it. It's people who like a certain way of articulating things are going to be drawn to mine and find it. Then there's going to be a lot of people who that doesn't work for. And so I think it's good to just have all different kinds of voices. Yeah,
for sure. And I think there's from what I've kind of been bouncing around checking out different atheist channels and stuff over the past year or so, and there's a lot of different ideas out there. I mean, there are other people out there sort of doing what I'm doing, but there's not that many. So I was kind of surprised. My initial idea to jump into this foray of YouTube atheism was to do some form of street epistemology, because I was a big fan of like Objectively Dan and Anthony Magnabosco and Cordial Curiosity. I really like those channels, and I like the way they did things. And then I thought, well, you know what? There's actually a large number of people doing that style, and I may still do it in the future. Because I think where I live here in Vancouver, there's some really nice areas I could set up a little table to do that with. So, but yeah, I decided, you know what? I think it's important that people hear these kinds of stories. So this is what I'm going to do. And at least for now. I had another idea that sort of spawned off of a Family Guy episode where I talked to people about what about religion grinds your gears, that kind of thing, right? So. And we would obviously talk about some of the stuff that you and I have gone over about the silly arguments and that we've heard a billion times, kind of thing, right? But yeah, the more of us out there, the better. Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to find out what appeals to you and what speaks to you, and just what you're good at too. You got to be you. You can find inspiration in other people, but I think you got to find out what your talents are and how you present well.
Right, exactly.
I couldn't just get behind a microphone like Mr. Atheist or Godless Engineer or something like that and do that. I would look stupid trying to do that. That's just not my strength, and I know that, and that's fine. I'm more of a recorded, scripted, doing a lot of editing and stuff like that. So everybody has their strengths, and so you just have to play to what works for you and what interests you. Yeah,
exactly. I had another channel back when I played a collectible trading card game called Yu-Gi-Oh! I used to do videos on that, and I got, at one point I was almost at 4,000 subscribers for that channel. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
And everywhere we go up and down the coast to the big events and stuff, and all the kids would see me and they go, oh my God, it's Savers 13, which was my channel name. And they always want me to sign their cards and stuff, which is just a trip to me, as I've never had that sort of intention before.
That's funny.
But the kids were pretty cool. Yeah, it was all right. And, I had a good time doing that, but I've kind of put that on the back burner for a while because I started doing this and my music channel as well, which is lame, but that's okay.
You said it was Yu-Gi-Oh cards?
Yu-Gi-Oh, yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's from a Japanese anime that is about a card game, so they turned it into a card game.
Okay. Yeah, my younger son watches a lot of that stuff, like I don't know, Pokemon and all these things. He watches the cartoons, and he watches channels probably similar to what yours was, where people are sitting there talking about the cards or whatever, or doing openings and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's what I did.
If you were something he would have stumbled into, but I don't think he's into that particular brand.
Possible. Well, he might have seen me in suggestions, because I did it from probably about 2010 till I want to say 2015. So I did it for about 5 years. So I've got like 6,000 videos, probably about 5,000 videos up there.
Holy cow! Wow.
Because I was going to any events and that I would do some film. I would film, like I would get other people at the locals or the regionals, and we'd film our duels and all kinds of stuff. So that's what a lot of people like to watch. I was never really all that great at the game. It was just a lot of fun for me because my ex-wife kids got me kind of turned on to it. So, and I just took it from there. Anyways, so we're about 45 into this. I usually do an after party for these things. I'm not sure what kind of time you have, but it might be cool if you jumped in to say hello for 5-10 minutes or so, just to some of the people that I usually hang out with in these things afterwards, because they're all fans of yours too, man. So
yeah, sure, I'd enjoy that.
That would be really cool. I mean, but all right, we'll worry about that in a few minutes. We still got some time. So what do you think? Do you see, is there going to be any changes to how you do your channel? Are you going to continue with the snowy face forever, or do you think you might actually do a reveal at some point?
I'm going to stick with the snowy face, I think. For one, people just recognize it. It's just what my character is now. It's funny if I see a character with static face, including that unwanted commentary guy, if I see that, I identify it as my face, which is really weird. Kind of like I'm looking in a mirror, looking at a picture of myself. It's strange that I see that and think that that's me, but that's where it's gotten. But yeah,
that's too funny.
That's just what my character on my channel is identified as. And honestly, at first I wasn't sure if I wanted to show my face, but now with time, it has more to do with the fact that I do a lot better if I read and record and edit my audio very tightly. It's the same reason Logic does it. He did a video explaining some of this. I can get a lot better in timing and cutting out stutters and stuff like that, and then just have my audio totally packaged and then just mime to it, which is what I'm doing. I'm not actually talking when I do that with a mask and the jacket and everything.
Yeah.
So it has more to do with that. So I don't think I would ever go live where I just couldn't read a script the same way. I feel like for me, the quality is a lot better if I have a tightly scripted word for word thing and then can edit it. So
sure. Yeah.
Whatever
works for you. Right?
I'm always making tweaks and try to come up with new little ideas, but it's small changes that you're going to see here and there, like formatting changes and stuff like that. As I said in the chat, I have taken off my mask several times on my channel, just at the end. It started once because there's always footage of me doing it because I have to pull the hat off of my head and then go shut the camera off. And once my wife saw it on my raw footage and said, "Hey, that'd be funny if you put that on there." So I did it once, and then yeah, from time to time, if I have good footage of myself doing it, I'll leave it on at the end just for fun.
I think GI was poking at you a little bit, and then his new wife was giving him crap for that. She says, "Don't mind shame, GI," because you're miming, right? So
one of my coworkers who used to sit in the cube next to me, we just over the course of conversation, he told me about a channel where he would record his skiing footage or something, and I said I've made some videos, and so he asked about it, and he actually watched it for a while and liked it, but then he would talk to me like this. "Oh, good morning, Jeremiah." Like
like he's a puppet or something.
Yeah, do my little thing with my gesture, like my exaggerated gestures. He'd start talking to me that way whenever he'd see me in the morning. But yeah.
One of the people watching has a quick question for you. Beach Price. He's wondering if the Story of Genesis series is finished.
Are you talking about the cartoons?
Yeah, I believe that's what he's
assume that's probably what they mean. I'm still continuing with that. And right now I'm working on a New Testament one, which is going to be more Jesus centered. And my idea is going to be to alternate between that and the New Testament. So partly just to mix things up a little bit. And also it'll give Frankie a little more time to shine, as I can alternate between him and Tony a little bit, giving them more parts. But yeah, so I'm working on that. I'm still working my way through Genesis. I still have to do maybe the Tower of Babel, Abraham, his descendants and stuff like that. It just depends on how much of a good story there is in each of them. I started thinking I would just bounce around, not do it chronologically, but I'm finding myself settling into that groove.
Sura says, "I'm here to support Prophet of Zod. Screw that 604 atheist guy." That's okay. Thanks for showing up, sir.
But yeah, the trick is it takes a long time to write those, and I have to get into a good groove and get into the. I don't know. I'm a busy adult, so at 43 years old with several kids, I do this as I can during breaks and when my kids are at school and stuff on Mondays and Tuesdays. So I just have to get into a time where I have energy and the comedy starts clicking and I can roll one of those out. So usually when there's a big break, the reason is it's just hard for me to get a good script written. So
right.
It'll be a slow, steady process. But yeah,
I'm the same way when it's writing, like when I write lyrics and stuff, I get this great idea and then I start jotting stuff down. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, where was I going with this when I originally thought about it? Right? So I gotta get stuck on stuff like that. But
yeah, I can roll out several pages of God and Jesus talking, or I can sit there and it just sounds stupid and won't come together. It just got to hit my stride.
Yeah. Well, you've done well so far, that's for sure. Your videos are quite entertaining, to say the least, and you're an easy, we'll say, character to identify with, I suppose you could say. And I think that's why you've done so well thus far. And I can't imagine you not continuing to climb with subscribers, because once more and more people see that, I'm sure you'll gain more, because what you do is fantastic. And the cartoons are great, by the way.
Thank you.
And many people in the chat have mentioned that as well, that they dig the cartoons.
Yeah, we have one coming out this week. It's not going to be a God and Jesus one, but it's going to be, it has Surus and Godless Iowan, who are actually in the chat right now. They're going to have very funny roles in it. They did a very good job. So
well, I'm available too if you ever need like another voice kind of thing, because I do all kinds of voices. So
cool. Yeah.
If you ever need that, just let me know, man. I'll be jumping there for sure.
Cool.
All right. Well, what do you say we could probably bring this to an end? I think we covered a lot. It wasn't exactly a full hour, but that gives you a little more time just to hang out with some more people. And the way I usually do that is I'll shut this one down.
Okay.
And I'll send you a brand new link, and I post the join link in my Neil's Usual Suspects chat group, which if you're wanting to, I can add you to. I usually add the people that I've interviewed into that group.
Sure.
And you're welcome to join us there as well. And I'll send you a nice fresh link in a couple of minutes, and then we can talk to some more people about some of this stuff.
That sounds really fun. Yeah.
Look at me.
Yeah, I'll join you as soon as it's up here in a second.
Yeah, okay. I'm getting all choppy anyway, so. All right, so I just want to say before we close this session out, thank you so much for doing this. I was pleased as punch when I heard that you were hanging out in the chat and you're saying, yeah, I could do this. So that was really cool of you to do this, man, because I've been a fan for a while. And when I get to talk to people that I admire on YouTube like this, it's a big thrill for somebody like me. So I'm just a little schlub, the low end. Hopefully people will start to enjoy it.
Well, we all are to various degrees, but yeah, I appreciate having me on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and thank everyone for joining us today. This was a really good talk. I think we covered everything we needed to cover in this conversation. We'll talk a little more with Zod after this. If you guys want to tune in, I'll tweet out the new link for the new video that you guys can watch. And you guys know the routine for jumping in. I'll post it in the Usual Suspects group, and anyone who's interested can jump in. But it could fill up really quick. So be quick, all right? Quick draw McGraw kind of thing. Anyways, thanks everyone for tuning in. As I usually say at the end of these things, I use the old Hitchens quote. They call it faith because it's not knowledge.